Hello, I'm Jason Rogers here in beautiful New Orleans, Louisiana, which played host to this year's National League of Cities Congress of Cities. Your councilman, Mr. Brooks Willis and Mr. Earl Cooler, attended this year, giving Hardeeville national exposure as well as gaining the knowledge and experience that's going to be vital in helping Hardeeville grow. The National League of Cities is a coalition of nearly 20,000 towns, cities, and villages representing more than 218 million Americans, and their annual Congress of Cities is the event where the leaders of these cities come together to share vital resources and attend workshops taught by some of the most knowledgeable experts in the country. If your town or city has a problem, there's every reason to believe that a solution can be found easily within the convention's numerous workshops, exhibitions, and networking opportunities. For Mayor Pro Tem Brooks Willis and Council Member Earl Cooler, the issue first and foremost on their minds was the revitalization of downtown Hardeeville.
We are facing right now a learning process, and we're trying to gather all the information that we can glean from anybody and everybody. One thing about it, we are going to do everything that we can to make certain that old Hardeeville grows up with the new part of Hardeeville. And when 10 years from now, old Hardeeville is going to look like the rest of the new Hardeeville and so forth. So that's our purpose of being here, is to find out what it will take to do what we've got to do and to draw from any source available.
First on the agenda, the Leadership Training Institute, and the topic, public-private partnerships. The 8-hour course detailed how local municipalities and private sector interest can work together to meet many goals. One example of a public-private partnership is Central Park in New York City, where a privately funded nonprofit organization manages the park under a contract from the city. Simply put, it's a way of having private money fund public projects.
Every time we go down the road of bringing in commercial and industrial dollars is that you have to have a balance between the public sector and the private sector if you want a healthy, active, and vigorous quality of life for a long time. And so we know that whatever solution we come up with for revitalizing our downtown is going to involve some type of public-private partnerships.
We learned that the situation with revitalization involves a whole lot. It's not just dealing with the real estate and getting rid of the old buildings and putting in new stuff, but it involves transportation issues, it involves revitalization issues, it involves water and wastewater issues, it involves rail transportation and bringing in maybe some old things from the past like streetcars and doing some things that's nostalgic. So it's been quite a session.
Public-private partnerships extend further than simple downtown revitalization, though. The incoming port will most likely rely on them heavily.
Some of the opportunities that jump off the page to me are opportunities to actually do some port kind of infrastructure to be that second layer of port development, one, and then secondly, because of the location of Hardeeville, to be able to be that kind of logistics hub, and then thirdly, to look at new developments that can come about through some of the work that's going to go on to build a channel or some of the other things to actually create that new infrastructure, new retail, new mixed-use deals.
And all of this happened before the Congress of Cities was officially in session on our very first full day in New Orleans. The opening ceremony saw all the attendees gathering to listen to speeches and presentations by numerous municipal leaders from throughout the country. National League of Cities President and Mayor of Indianapolis, Bart Peterson, spoke, as well as Mayor Ray Nagin of New Orleans.
The speakers this morning was perhaps the best speakers overall I've ever heard. They had a lot of substance to give us. They were very experienced people, well educated. They knew exactly what they were talking about, and the presentation was outstanding.
The opening ceremony stressed the importance of cities working together and sharing knowledge with one another.
If you have a problem, there's somebody, some city in America that has solved that problem. This is where we come as elected officials to get energized, to learn the best practices, to get information as to how to not reinvent the wheel. So this is the place to come. This is our haven that we learn to do whatever needs to be done for the city. And you know, we don't always have monies to do it, so there's always someone out there that has had an innovative idea as to how to do it with very little money.
It is hard to leave your city and go to a conference to learn. You got to believe that you're going to bring something very, very valuable home. And in my experience, I can't tell you the number of things that I have learned that have been directly applicable to what I have done back home. Those two council members, they are going to take something different home from this conference perhaps than I do, but it's going to be very, very relevant to their community. And that's what's so great about an organization that's this large. You can draw from so many different people.
A striking example of that was after the press conference, when Mr. Cooler and Mr. Willis got a chance to meet Mayor Nagin one-on-one and talk a bit with him about Hardeeville and also the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina.
Nothing hit home more than probably that 5 minutes that the two councilmen from Hardeeville, Mr. Cooler and our Mayor Pro Tem, got with Mayor Nagin, because we can all pretend if we want to that we're never going to experience a natural disaster, but the bottom line is we live where we live, and it's just a matter of time before we get visited by some type of natural disaster.
The thing I've emphasized the most is that the FEMA Stafford Act process of recovery after a major disaster is one that they need to be aware of, that is primarily a reimbursement process. So if you do not have quick access to cash, to resources and to dollars to make things happen, to start the ball, then you're going to struggle like we've been struggling. So that's one of the main things that I've tried to put forward.
With the conference being in New Orleans, the effects of Hurricane Katrina were impossible to ignore. Your council members made the most of the opportunity, not only by talking with Mayor Nagin, but also by touring the devastation.
The devastation that we saw on that trip we made is one of the worst I've seen since leaving Korea.
There's so much left there that you can use your imagination and know exactly what is happening. And believe me, it's a devastation that I don't think any of us ever want to face. They've come a long way in cleaning up, and some of it is well on the way to being repaired. The closer you get to the breaks, obviously, are the areas where not much repair work has been done.
It's just incredible when you tour the areas that look like nobody's even been in there to clean up some of the debris, for example, some of the most basic things that you would have thought would have already happened years ago. And there's still so many large sections of New Orleans that haven't been cleaned up yet. And they haven't even, it's just very sad, and you just can't ignore it.
Things were, houses destroyed, pieces of houses here and there, and trees that had been torn down, and it was just a bad situation. It looked like a war zone.
What they saw really illustrated what Mayor Nagin talked about.
What I took from him on that is don't sit there and be complacent and expect that FEMA is going to be sitting there waiting on you to have a disaster. That you better be working with FEMA ahead of time to be sure that you have the resources in place if you're in a coastal city particularly.
The devastation of New Orleans was never far from anyone's mind throughout the rest of the conference, and the conference had a lot to offer. The exhibitor space held vendors from all over the country, offering all sorts of products and services that can raise the standard of services that the city of Hardeeville provides.
I have never seen any place I've ever been to that had any more exhibitions than I saw just being here in New Orleans. This is one of the biggest centers I've ever seen, convention centers. And they have really went out to bring all these expositions in and to present them to the public. And I saw about everything anybody could see, and of course made some notes on what we might want to try to do in Hardeeville and our town.
There were GIS contractors, playground equipment vendors, and much, much more. Mayor Pro Tem Brooks Willis stopped by the NLC's booth and spoke to a representative about an issue crucial to Hardeeville and all of Jasper County: education.
We're working a lot more with smaller cities on education issues, and a lot of it's focused on helping city leaders realize their roles not just as municipal officials, but as civic leaders, and being able to engage the community in supporting public schools, recruiting good teachers, and forming partnerships with businesses and that sort of thing.
The exhibitor floor was also a chance to meet other elected officials, and even some from South Carolina, like Lexington Town Council member Kathy Maness.
I am glad to see some fellow Palmetto State people, especially since I'm the only one from my council, and our friends at Hardeeville are going to let me hang out with them tonight. So I appreciate the opportunity to see some people from back home, and I'm glad that we have a great opportunity to be here at National League of Cities and get some good professional development so that we can be better council people and better staff people for our towns and cities.
One of the pleasant surprises, and I mean surprises, we were not down there to have this happen at all, but one of the pleasant surprises of the Congress of Cities was finding out that other parts of South Carolina and other parts of the Southeast already had a presence there, and they were so excited to see Hardeeville there because they know about the growth that's happening here. They know about the exciting things that are going on here.
Ann Sinclair, a council member from Columbia, South Carolina, was also there and spoke at length with Mr. Willis and Mr. Cooler about the need for cooperation between different municipalities. And of course, they took the opportunity to tell her about what Hardeeville is doing. The last event your council members participated in was a workshop specifically designed around providing support to cities looking to revitalize their downtown areas. Various revitalization organizations presented the workshop, and it gave valuable information about how Hardeeville might preserve Old Town Hardeeville.
The thing that I'm so impressed with, the people that are conducting this lecture in here, are people that have been in this business for a number of years, and they have been more or less kind of entwined with the National League in their National League's efforts to help people with revitalization. And right in there is where it all begins, between our architect and getting information from them is just how to get started. And that's what I intend to do before we leave here, is to get enough information from them so that I can get feedback on whatever we can get for free till we get to the point that it's a paying situation, so we can lay the groundwork.
Some of that groundwork has already started with the remodeling of Dr. Frank's offices and with the addition of the Main Street Village development. This workshop shows the way to build on those early successes.
It's given me a good idea as to what the process we want to take and get an old Hardeeville revamped. And I think I've got some pretty good ideas now to bring back to Hardeeville that we can sit down and discuss and go ahead and work out some kind of a program to get things rolling.
One of the first things we talked about when we formed the Economic Development Department here in the city was that we had to balance bringing in new commercial and industrial dollars, but also make sure that part of the benefit from that not only went to the new residential tax base in Hardeeville, but that the existing citizenry and the existing downtown got a benefit, which means that we had to revitalize our downtown so that the community's character and charm that we all want to protect stays there forever.
Whether it was learning about how to revitalize Old Town Hardeeville, or how to help with education, or simply networking with other municipalities, Mayor Pro Tem Brooks Willis and Councilmember Earl Cooler gained a lot from attending the conference.
It's a great thing to participate in, because you can't sit in Hardeeville with what's going on there and just sit there and not get outside the city limits and expect to grow with everybody else. You got to get out, you got to mingle, you got to talk, you got to find out what's going on elsewhere. You got to get new ideas and take them back. And most of all, we want to spread our story, and we've been able to do this.
Very important for me to be here, be a councilman, and very concerned about my hometown. I'm a hometown boy, and I'm certainly going to look after the old part of Hardeeville, so to speak. And I'm glad to be here because my eyes have been opened to quite a few things now that we can do, and we'll try to do as time progresses.
This year's Congress was a great success, not only for the city of Hardeeville, but also for New Orleans. HTVN looks forward to bringing you more stories about how your council is dealing with the unprecedented growth of Hardeeville.